It was a typical Friday night, and I had just finished a long day at work. I was exhausted, and all I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and relax. I opened my Uber app and requested a ride. The driver, a middle-aged man named John, arrived promptly in a sleek black car. He greeted me with a warm smile as I got into the back seat. The car smelled fresh and clean, a welcome change from some of my previous rides. As we set off, John struck up a friendly conversation. We talked about everything from the weather to our favorite restaurants in town. He had an easygoing personality, and I found myself enjoying the ride more than I had anticipated. About halfway through the trip, we approached a dimly lit stretch of road that was notorious for its lack of streetlights. It was the kind of place that gave you an eerie feeling, especially at night. I glanced out the window, trying to shake off the unease that was creeping over me. That's when I noticed it. The car behind us was tailgating us aggressively, its bright headlights blinding me in the rearview mirror. I could see the silhouette of the driver, and something about their erratic behavior set off alarm bells in my mind. I turned to John and said, "Hey, I think we're being followed by that car behind us. Can you please speed up or pull over?" John glanced in the rearview mirror, his expression shifting from friendly to concerned. Without a word, he accelerated, but the car behind us matched our speed. It was clear they weren't going to back off. My heart raced as panic set in. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, telling the dispatcher about our situation. They assured me that help was on the way, but with every passing second, the car behind us seemed to get closer. John, now visibly anxious, took a sudden turn onto a side street, hoping to lose our pursuer. But the car followed us relentlessly. We were trapped in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse on the dark, deserted streets. Just when I thought we were out of options, I heard the distant wailing of sirens. The police were coming. John continued to maneuver through the labyrinthine streets, doing his best to keep us safe until the authorities arrived. Finally, the flashing lights of the police cars illuminated the road ahead, and the car behind us abruptly turned and sped away, disappearing into the night. The relief that washed over me was immeasurable. The police pulled us over and took our statements. They assured us that they would investigate the incident thoroughly. John and I shared a quiet moment of gratitude as we realized how narrowly we had escaped a potentially dangerous situation. As I continued my journey home, I couldn't help but think about how my seemingly routine Uber ride had turned into a harrowing ordeal. It was a stark reminder that sometimes, even in the midst of the ordinary, danger could lurk just around the corner. It was a late Saturday night, and I had just stepped out of a friend's house after a lively get-together. I had a few drinks, so I decided to order an Uber for a safe ride home. I pulled out my phone and tapped the app, watching the map as my driver, supposedly named Sarah, made her way toward me. The app notified me that Sarah had arrived, so I headed toward the car parked at the curb. As I approached, I saw a woman in the driver's seat, her face obscured by the dimly lit interior. I opened the back door and greeted her with a cheerful hi. The driver didn't respond, which I thought was a bit odd, but I figured she might just be concentrating on driving. I settled into the back seat and glanced at the driver's profile picture on the app to confirm her identity. It was definitely the same woman. We began the journey, and I tried to make conversation, but the driver remained silent, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. It was a little unnerving, but I assumed she was having a bad day or simply preferred a quiet ride. As we drove further away from my friend's house, I noticed that the surroundings were becoming unfamiliar. We were heading in the wrong direction, away from my home. Panic started to bubble up inside me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling. "I think you might be going the wrong way." "My destination is in the opposite direction." The driver didn't respond. She continued to drive, her hands firmly gripping the steering wheel. I felt a knot in my stomach as we passed empty streets and dimly lit alleys. I realized that this wasn't just a simple navigation mistake. Something was seriously wrong. I reached for my phone to call 911, but before I could dial, the driver suddenly pulled over in a desolate area. My heart pounded in my chest as I contemplated what to do. I could see that the driver was now turning to face me, her face still hidden in shadows. With a trembling hand, I unlocked the car door and made a split-second decision to jump out of the car and run. Adrenaline surged through me as I sprinted down the dark street, not daring to look back. I eventually found a well-lit area and called 911. The police arrived quickly and took my statement. They assured me they would do everything they could to locate the driver and investigate the incident. As I finally made it home safely that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had washed over me. It turned out that the driver who had picked me up wasn't the real Uber driver. I had narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation, and it was a chilling reminder of the importance of verifying the driver's identity before getting into any ride-sharing vehicle. It was a chilly winter evening when I found myself in need of an Uber. I had just finished a late-night shift at the office, and the streets were deserted as I stood on the dimly lit sidewalk, waiting for my ride. The app showed that the driver, Sarah, was just a few minutes away. As Sarah's car pulled up to the curb, I noticed that she had decorated the interior with colorful LED lights, creating a cozy and welcoming ambience. Her cheerful greeting put me at ease as I settled into the back seat. The ride began like any other. Sarah and I exchanged pleasantries, discussing the weather and the challenges of late-night commuting. She had a warm and friendly demeanor that made the ride enjoyable, and I soon found myself engrossed in conversation with her. As we chatted, Sarah shared stories about her experiences as an Uber driver. She told me about the interesting people she had met and the occasional odd request she had received. Her anecdotes were captivating, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with her. However, as we continued driving through the deserted streets, I noticed that we were veering away from the usual route to my apartment. I mentioned this to Sarah, and she assured me that she knew a shortcut that would get me home faster. Trusting her judgment, I leaned back in my seat, appreciating the thoughtfulness she had put into creating a comfortable atmosphere in her car. The LED lights danced around us, and I began to relax. But as we entered a desolate, dimly lit area, I began to feel uneasy. The street seemed eerily deserted, and there were no familiar landmarks in sight. Doubt gnawed at me, and I wondered if I should have questioned Sarah's decision to take a different route. Just as I was about to express my concern, Sarah suddenly pulled over to the side of the road. My heart raced as I looked around, trying to make sense of our surroundings. We were in a remote industrial area, far from any residential neighborhoods. Sarah turned to me, her demeanor shifting from friendly to menacing. She grinned and said, "You know, you're a really interesting person. I think I'd like to get to know you better." Panic coursed through my veins as I realized that I was in a vulnerable situation. I fumbled for my phone, intending to call for help, but Sarah reached over and snatched it from my hand. The seconds felt like hours as I contemplated my options. I knew I had to act quickly. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the door handle, flinging the car door open and stumbling out onto the deserted road. As I scrambled to my feet, I could hear Sarah cursing from inside the car. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, not daring to look back. I eventually found a gas station where I could call the police and report the incident. The authorities arrived promptly, and after recounting my terrifying experience, they launched an investigation into the driver, Sarah. It turned out that she had a history of suspicious behavior, and I was not her first victim. My late-night Uber ride had taken a chilling turn, but my decision to escape from that car had saved me from a potentially dangerous situation. It was a stark reminder that even in the most ordinary of circumstances, we must remain vigilant and trust our instincts to ensure our safety.